something just exploded here. There was a double explosion. Look at that smoke, it's insane. It exploded 3 times. Hey, are you coming here? Come on, please. Get over to me much faster than you are now. And make sure to bring your binoculars with you. It happened literally right in front of my own eyes, and I need you to see it for yourself. Hurry. I really need you here as soon as possible. It just hit.
The Russian emergency services started wailing after those strikes. Naval drones broke into Putin's key port and destroyed a warship. It was caught on video. Our side's ruthless revenge. 3 missiles each at Russian power plants. Blackouts are hitting Russian cities one after another. Voronezh, Belgorod, and Moscow is next. Disaster is at the Kremlin's doorstep. Propagandists have turned against Putin. They accuse the dictator of attacks on oil refineries. He shouts the loudest while the army turns its guns around. What everyone was talking about has begun. Watch until the end. Hello, this is Ukraine Today. I'm Victoria Panchenko, and here are the latest events. The situation in Russia is critical. The enemy's deep rear is turning into a real battlefield. Ukrainian naval drones swiftly broke into the port of Tuapse in Krasnodar Krai and struck right at the heart of the enemy.
It's burning.
It's exploding. At this very moment, there is panic among Russians, chaos in the authorities, and the Russian fleet is slowly sinking.
Locals report successful hits. It is likely that one of the ships was hit. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
At the same time, Rostov region is in an uproar. There were direct hits on the railway substation and the control center. Reuters, citing Russian railways, reports that the company has extended restrictions on cargo transportation toward Tuapse until November 13th. Our side hit the jackpot.
Pokrovsk was attacked for the first time on July 19th, a second time on August 2nd. The strike on the station caused delays for 50 civilian trains. We're finishing the job.
Judging by the Ministry of Defense's report, Russia was in turmoil. A whole swarm seriously kept the Russians awake and brought the collapse of all the enemy's plans closer.
71 Ukrainian unmanned aerial vehicles were destroyed and intercepted by air defense systems this time.
However, the Russians are no strangers to this kind of commotion. The day before, Ukrainian forces struck 3 major enemy targets at once. First up was the Voronezh CHP plant.
Right over there, you can see. It must have hit the power lines or something, basically. Then there was a big flash over there. And right when it hit over there, damn, right there, where it is now, well, basically, the balcony shook. I live on the 14th floor. I thought maybe a car alarm just went off.
3 missiles hit the CHP plant. One struck the outer wall of boiler house number 1, as seen in the photo. The second pierced the roof and destroyed the base of the building. The third one, probably, hit the turbine hall building. This is being clarified using satellite images. And
here are the very first shots after the massive destruction. Photos have leaked online showing what the Voronezh CHP plant looks like now. Ruins that, until recently, supplied heat and electricity to about 1,000 enterprises, including military ones. The roof
was blown off.
Russian Taganrog is also on the list of places where Ukrainian fury sweeps away everything in its path. Local residents are groaning.
There was an explosion here, a double blast, smoke. It was just crazy over there, really insane. The whole...
City engulfed in fire at the substation, panic on social media, no electricity or water, and it looks like it will stay that way for a long time.
BSA T25 is a key step-down substation that connects the 110 kilovolt main lines to the city networks.
It seems Russians will have to get used to living without power and heat. The Taganrog and Voronezh Belgorod is now being added as well.
Where is this crap? Yeah, somewhere around here. We need to shoot it down. I'm recording Surgic for my mom.
Ukrainians are advising Russians to stock up on generators, since the Ukrainian Armed Forces are already turning off the lights even in Moscow itself. The heart of the Russian Federation has been struck. Our drones are on a targeted course. Never before has there been such large-scale destruction on enemy territory. The panic in the Kremlin is obvious. This is a real catastrophe. Ukraine's response has reached a new level. The failure of Russian air defense is obvious. And this is just the beginning. Things will get even more serious. Don't miss it. You have to see this.
Ukrainian drones are striking the Russian power system more frequently and on a larger scale. On the night of October 5th, Ukrainian UAVs attacked energy infrastructure in the Vladimir and Oryol regions. In Vladimir, the strike hit a 750-kilowatt substation in the suburbs. Local residents claim that the city was attacked by missiles, not UAVs.
Murderer.
In Orel, explosions occurred near the local thermal power plant, the largest source of electricity and heat in the region. The attack was most likely a missile strike, since the video contains neither the sounds of air defense nor the buzzing of drones.
That was a big bang.
This is already the second attack on the Orel thermal power plant in the past week. On October 31st, it was hit by Neptune cruise missiles. At that time, the city was left without power. Also, on the last day of October, the Vladimir thermal power plant was on fire as well.
Moreover, this substation supplies electricity to the central region, including Moscow, Vladimir, Nizhny Novgorod, and partly Ivanovo regions. In general, it also participates in power transmission, from the Kalinin nuclear power plant to the Kostroma Giaries and other major energy sources.
The stable operation of the Vladimir substation is critically important for the reliability of the Russian energy system's balance. It holds special significance. Energy from the Kalinin nuclear power plant is supplied through it. This makes the substation one of the key facilities for the Moscow energy hub. The Ukrainian Armed Forces want to cause a blackout in the Whitestone city by striking substations around Moscow.
In recent weeks, attacks on important energy nodes have been recorded. Arzamas 500 kilovolts on October 14th, Balashov 500 kilovolts on October 16th and 25th, Vladimir 750 kilovolts on October 17th and 31st and November 5th, Vishkaima 500 kilovolts on October 18th, Novobryansk 750 kilovolts on October 29th, Lipetsk 500 kilovolts on November 2nd, Frolov 500 kilovolts on November 3rd. According to industry analysts, the goal of the strikes is to deprive Moscow of the ability to receive maneuverable electricity from the Volga hydroelectric power stations.
Before these strikes on substations, the head of Unmanned Systems Forces, Robert Brody, warned that Muscovites should start preparing for blackouts.
A blackout is nothing to be afraid of. The SBS birds, together with other components of Ukraine's deep strike capabilities, promise you a rapid, albeit forced adaptation. But you'll manage. Matches, flashlights, candles. By the way, take the opportunity to use your favorite battery-powered garlands too. We won't be informing you about every 750 kilowatt, 500 kilowatt, and so on. That gets battered by the birds. Just go by the principle: light, warmth, boom, darkness, cold. And your open source intelligence in public channels is still working flawlessly as long as there's internet. The strikes were announced and the strikes happened. And the enemy, even knowing which infrastructure would be targeted, was unable to organize an effective defense. There were announcements that blackouts were expected, and only after that did the drones take off.
If such strikes continue, then in the short term, Moscow will be left without electricity. Plus strikes on gas storage facilities and gas distribution stations. Then the capital of the Russian Federation will be left not only without electricity, but also without heat.
Right now, the explosions aren't stopping, and at Russian oil refineries, it's the perfect time to buy yourself some binoculars to get a better view of Russia's greatness falling apart. Saratov is on the line.
It hit the plant 3 times. Hey, are you coming here? Come on, get over here faster. And bring binoculars.
Even the propagandists are starting to melt down. Even Solovyov couldn't take it anymore. He's complaining to the whole country that Russia isn't responding at all to the destruction of their oil refineries.
But now, as they say, even just the debris from the supposedly downed drones is causing so much damage that you start to wonder, will anyone in our country be held responsible for this?
Meanwhile, another problem is brewing in Russia. Putin's elite is returning from the so-called Special Military Operation Front and trying to impose their own rules. But the dictator clearly doesn't like that. An urgent order has been given to detain contract soldiers. Videos from the heart of Russia show how Putin is beginning to purge his inner circle. Kremlin mouthpieces are losing control, their channels are being blocked, and the topic of the Russian army has become taboo. Moscow is nervous, and with good reason. Russians are no longer staying silent. They are taking to the streets in protest, and discontent is growing by the day. Could a coup be next? We'll find out very soon.
What could be scarier for Russians than sending their own son or husband to the front in Ukraine? That's right, if he comes back from there. In
St. Petersburg, a man who returned from the war is terrorizing his apartment building, threatening his neighbors and throwing things off the balcony. Some kind of imitation grenades.
Very few people want to live on the same street or worse in the same building as these so-called heroes of the special military operation. As a rule, these newly discharged soldiers were already notorious outcasts even before the war, and after returning from the front, they've completely gone off the rails. Theft, murdering their own drinking buddies, rape and robbery have become commonplace for Russian special military operation veterans. It's just everyday life for them back in civilian society.
There's a saying among our people. There's no defense against a crowbar. Except another crowbar.
And for the Russian ex-cons, drug addicts and psychopaths returning from the war, that other crowbar will be quite literal. Tangible even. How can I put this more delicately? The story of the sledgehammer. It's hard to believe, but Russian propagandists are increasingly speaking openly about zeroing out their own soldiers. Z-bloggers are convinced that there is no place for special military operation participants in civilian life. The state isn't even considering reintegrating or adapting any of them to peaceful life.
All of this mass of people
who have received weapons experience the realities of war, and some of whom have notably a very serious criminal past. Something has to be done with these people.
Moreover, it's far from the best of the best who return from the war to civilian life. The new Putin military elite, as it's called, the bunker crowd, is made up entirely of amnestied convicts.
I would really truly like to look directly into the eyes of the individual, the person who ultimately made the decision to use prisoners in actual combat operations. Because in my opinion, this is essentially a ticking time bomb, a dangerous situation just waiting to explode.
And it will explode inside Russia itself. And
maybe they're just idiots, that's also possible. And
a significant portion of our contingent at this stage already consists of individuals who, while either serving time in prison or being under investigation, sign contracts with the Ministry of Defense. In doing so, they either avoid punishment from the court or they get out of camps, out of prisons, and gain the opportunity. As they say, they are told to atone for their guilt with blood, but in reality they get the chance to be free for a while, and possibly, if things go well, to later walk free, fully pardoned, maybe even with awards and so on and so forth.
The solution that the Kremlin has found is both ingenious and cruel at the same time. There are rumors that Putin simply gave the order not to let anyone return alive from the front, especially the more compliant convicts the Russian authorities want to send to Africa. As for the rest, following the good old Wagner PMC tradition, they are to be disposed of.
The first option is to send them somewhere in Africa. The second option is that overall they will be, well, how should I put it, dealt with more gently. The story with the sledgehammer.
At the same time, it should be noted that such a proposal, which is increasingly voiced by Kremlin propagandists, seems to have received tacit approval from the Russian population.
Because this is Russian Nazism. They get a thrill from death. It's the only thing that truly excites them.
A full-scale campaign against Russian contract soldiers returning from the special military operation has been launched on federal channels as well. There, around the clock, 24/7, they keep persuading people to sign a contract with the Ministry of Defense. But when it comes to the death rate at the front, the Kremlin has told them to keep quiet. For example, Russian propagandists cut out part of Putin's conversation with an 11-year-old girl from the broadcast in which she asked the president to bring her uncle back from the war. And
what should I say to you? What would I tell you?
Well, my uncle is at the front right now. He was wounded in the arm. He was in the hospital. They aren't treating him at all. And now they're sending him out on a mission. And I would like him to be transferred to a good hospital in Russia. I hope so.
Russian propaganda has received the go-ahead. The Kremlin's mouthpiece has been tasked with turning on their own soldiers. Go
quietly and pretend that you aren't being beaten.
It seems Putin has grown bored of playing war games with his old toy soldiers. So the bunker dweller gave the order to get rid of them.
Weakness is unacceptable because it creates temptation. The illusion that some issue with us can be resolved.
Endless video appeals from grief-stricken Russian mothers in despair, trying to find their children who went missing at the front, pleas for help. Maimed and abandoned contract soldiers left without medicine or medical care, and complaints from mobilized troops about the unbearable conditions of service in the Russian army, it seems, have really gotten on Vladimir Vladimirovich's nerves. But instead of solving the problem, the bunker dweller chose simply to ignore it and gave Russian propagandists the directive to stop any discussion about the troubles in the Russian army.
There's simply no need. There's no need, and it's just absurd.
Putin only needs soldiers on the battlefield. Outside of it, all these people become a threat to the Kremlin. Unprincipled and skilled with weapons, they could cause the regime extra problems.
What is there to say? The individuals working in the swamps record everything carefully and clearly, and they hide absolutely nothing.
The system will only be activated as a last resort, to bring them home as a last resort, and even then only if, in other words, the order is to scatter them wherever possible, in any available place.
Those who stubbornly refuse to be scattered will simply, inevitably be eliminated.
Ukraine has created a real iron monster, even cooler than American Tomahawks. This missile of the Ukrainian Armed Forces strikes farther, faster, and more accurately. The Allies are stunned. The Kremlin is shocked. Ukraine's fiery bird, the Flamingo, ushers in a new era of weaponry. Permission from the Allies to strike deep into Russia is no longer needed. The front is boiling with the offensive. The Russians are drowning in blood. Pokrovsk is holding on. The Ukrainians are standing firm. The enemy is falling. Syrskyi made an emergency statement. There is more than just Plan B. Pokrovsk buried Putin's army. All the details in just a moment. Greetings. This is Ukraine Today. I am Victoria Panchenko, and the latest events. Better than a Tomahawk? Ukraine has created a weapon that is changing the rules of the game. The Ukrainian defense industry is in full swing. Engineers are combining old Soviet technologies with ultra-modern IT developments to break free from dependence on allies. The new Ukrainian cruise missile Flamingo is not just an analog, but a real monster that has surpassed the American Tomahawk. And most importantly, permission from allies to strike Russia is no longer needed. This is reported by The Independent. The British publication has revealed the specifications of the Ukrainian long-range weapon.
It has a range of up to 3,000 kilometers. Its maximum speed is 900 kilometers per hour. The warhead can carry over a ton of explosives.
According to journalists, the price of the Ukrainian missile is about the same as the American Tomahawks, but the result is twice as powerful. The Independent notes that at the heart of the Ukrainian missile are Soviet-era turbofan engines literally dug up from scrapyards. But thanks to Ukrainian IT engineers, these old pieces of metal have been transformed into high-precision weapons. Production is in full swing, and the results have impressed even the Allies. Ukrainian ballistics are reaching their peak. Mass production of the Flamingo has been launched, and now there is 4 times more fire and fury. The Kremlin is in shock. Our factories are working at full capacity, creating the arsenal for future victory. This mega weapon could put a final end to the war. Details coming up in just a moment.
A new level and scale, Ukraine is ramping up the production of cruise missiles. The developers of the Ukrainian Flamingo missile have stated that the company is producing 50 missiles per month and plans to reach a daily output of 7 missiles by the end of the year. The company claims that their proprietary wing manufacturing technology helps scale up production by shortening the production cycle. Let us recall that the Ukrainian missile can fly up to 3,000 kilometers and carry a ton of explosives. In August, the Flamingo struck Russian targets in temporarily occupied Crimea. Early in the morning, 3 missiles were launched from the Ukrainian coast. The strike hit a base of Russian border guards, which is overseen by the Federal Security Service of the aggressor country. Additionally, the manufacturers of Flamingo have announced the development of their own ballistic missiles, the FP-7 and FP-9, as well as air defense systems. Thanks to private companies, Ukraine will be able to create innovations in the defense industry and effectively implement them on the battlefield.
It was precisely during the years of the full-scale invasion that Ukraine's defense industry made a revolutionary breakthrough: the production of Ukrainian ballistic missiles. First and foremost, this refers to the modernized version of Neptune. The anti-ship version of Neptune was upgraded to strike land targets. And at the moment, as a result of improved technical and tactical characteristics, according to the developers, the Neptune now has a range of up to 1,000 kilometers. In addition, the Ukrainian Defense Forces are armed with the previously mentioned operational tactical complex Sapsan, which has a range of up to 500 kilometers. Plus, during the years of war, the Ukrainian Defense Forces have demonstrated a unique ability to modernize even Soviet-era weaponry. This refers to the S-200 surface-to-air missile system.
Another of the most important developments has been missile drones such as Polyanitsia, Peklo, Ruta, and Bars.
During the period of the full-scale invasion, Ukraine's defense industry has evolved in terms of producing its own strike weapons. And of course, let's not forget about strike drones. Here, according to KLG, which is an official recognition of Ukraine's achievements, Ukraine holds leading positions in the world.
The armed forces of Ukraine are successfully striking Russian military targets with drone systems targeting oil refineries. Drone attacks have disabled up to 17% of Russia's oil refining capacity. Ukraine is also actively working on the production of interceptor drones. The Minister of Defense stated that Kyiv will soon reach the capacity to deploy at least 1,000 of these UAVs per day to defend against Russian attacks.
Ukraine currently holds a leading position in the production of interceptor drones. This is a Ukrainian know-how. To put things in perspective, during the latest provocation by the Russian Federation, specifically the violation of Polish airspace, NATO countries' air defense systems used missiles costing $1.5 million to neutralize Geren decoy drones worth only $10,000 each. Meanwhile, the Ukrainian side is currently in the process of expanding and intensifying the so-called drone wall tactic, specifically the use of interceptor drones.
Ukraine is also developing a new air defense system of the air-to-air class, capable of covering large areas. All this means that Ukrainian developers have demonstrated the ability to create high-precision weaponry capable of destroying important enemy military targets deep behind the front lines.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism, and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.
Ukraine has truly made a breakthrough in missile production. The most powerful long-range Flamingo and Neptune missiles are already striking military and energy targets deep behind enemy lines. Fiery details, watch right now.
The consequences of the war unleashed by Russia are starting to return to its own territory in the form of Ukrainian drones and long-range missiles. The General Staff does not deny that after Belgorod, Muscovites too may soon experience firsthand what a blackout is.
The axe isn't working. This is Udenova. On the right there are buildings 10, 12 and 14. Darkness. On the left is Udenova. Darkness.
In the Tyumen and Sverdlovsk regions, restrictions have been introduced on gasoline sales, no more than 30 liters per person. Previously, this new rule affected the Khabarovsk territory, Chelyabinsk region, and the occupied Crimea. All these lines and empty gas stations are due to daily attacks on oil refineries. Commander-in-Chief Syrsky stated that in September, according to the Deep Strike program, there have been reports of 70 strikes on Russian territory.
We are destroying the production of fuel and lubricants, explosives, and other components of the Russian military-industrial complex in the aggressor country. Among other things, oil production in Russia has decreased by 21%.
The intensification and expansion of Ukraine's so-called long-range sanctions across Russian territory became one of the main topics at the president's meeting with the security bloc.
Ukrainian long-range weaponry is becoming significantly more advanced. We are constantly working on this and have already provided a wide range of opportunities for production. The necessary funding, all the required support, it is necessary to scale up their use in a truly tangible way. We have clear plans regarding this for the coming months. Everything must be implemented. Ukrainian precision is already visible, but there should be more. It is absolutely fair that Ukraine delivers retaliatory strikes, targeted strikes, unlike Russia. We know what we want to achieve. Of course, peace.
At the moment, the carriers of sanctions deep into Russian territory are the Flamingo and Neptune missiles. The company Firepoint announced the start of production of the first ones at the end of the summer. At that time, footage of the Flamingo launch appeared online. And some analysts suggested, in fact, that they flew as a greeting to the territory of occupied Crimea. The publication Welt reported that it was these missiles that destroyed the FSB base on the peninsula. 3 missiles left craters 15 meters in diameter each.
Kupri exploded suddenly and unexpectedly. Kupri exploded right before our eyes.
At that time, German journalists also reported that 50 missiles roll off the assembly line each month, with plans to increase that to 200 per month. And now the Russians have supposedly displayed the wreckage of a downed Flamingo missile. According to their information, it was hit on Russian territory by a Buk system at an altitude of 100 meters and a speed of 600 kilometers per hour. Judging by the serial number, the occupiers assume this is the 106th munition produced in September. There is no reliable confirmation that the Flamingo destroyed the FSB base. Military analysts believe that the successful strikes, and not just this one, could have been carried out by Neptune itself. Today, 3 modifications of Neptune have already been tested and put into serial production in the Ukrainian defense industry. A 4th is in preparation.
Testing is underway now. This is the long-range Neptune, which can reach 1,000 kilometers. It is currently undergoing testing. It has already achieved, let's say, positive results. And further on, it will simultaneously undergo the process of being put into serial production. I believe this series of Neptunes makes the country more capable and reveals our combat potential. Because not every country in the world has cruise missiles, and even fewer have cruise missiles that, in the future, will be both sea and land-based, and let's say, with various ranges.
For obvious reasons, Ukrainian weapons developers do not share much information about strikes against the aggressor. Thank you. But President Zelensky has admitted to the press that the defense forces even combine them. And this, analysts admit, is a successful practice that Ukrainians can adopt from their enemy.
This missile is likely to be produced in larger quantities, but at the same time it will be cheaper compared to the high-tech Neptune missile. And here there are a whole range of combinations. For example, the Neptune missile, being less detectable and more accurate, can be used to clear a corridor, or even the other way around. For instance, a number of Flamingo missiles, which will be highly visible but very cheap, can be used as decoys to draw the attention of air defense forces at the enemy, while the less visible but precise Neptune missile passes through and delivers a targeted strike.
The Ukrainian defense industry is now nothing like it was at the start of the full-scale Russian aggression. The country's military and political leadership has finally realized that only local arms manufacturers can guarantee stable supplies of weapons to the front. Of course, provided there is adequate funding. But with each passing day, as more and more unidentified drones terrorize EU skies, Europeans and Scandinavians are increasingly interested not only in Ukraine's experience, but also in cooperating with Ukraine in the production of weapons suited to the realities of modern warfare.
Ukrainian defenders are striking the enemy even on the front lines. Russian and Ukrainian forces continue to engage in fierce fighting in the Pokrovsk direction. However, the pace of the Russian advance in and around Pokrovsk has temporarily slowed. This is stated in a report by analysts from the Institute for the Study of War. Commander-in-Chief Syrskyi has also made this statement. Moreover, the Institute for the Study of War has found no evidence that Russian forces have advanced in the Pokrovsk direction.
The intensity of enemy attacks has indeed decreased. This does not mean that they want to capture Pokrovsk any less. Right now, the Russians have gathered 50,000 troops there. But they know that since October, our forces have eliminated about the same number, 30,000 Russian soldiers. Moreover, the 425th Assault Regiment has been deployed to Pokrovsk and it is operating very effectively.
Notably, the Commander-in-Chief of Ukraine's Armed Forces, Oleksandr Syrskyi, addressed this. Does the Ukrainian command have a plan to save defenders in the Pokrovsk direction?
Of course, there is a Plan B and a Plan C. For every possible development of the situation,
Pokrovsk and Kupiansk truly remain the hottest spots on the map of the Russian-Ukrainian war. What is happening on these sections of the front right now? More in the following report.
The battles for control over the cities of Kupiansk and Pokrovsk, two strategic hubs on Ukraine's eastern front, do not stop for a single day. The occupiers are throwing in more and more forces trying to break through the defense. But Ukrainian troops are steadfastly holding back the assaults, inflicting heavy losses on the enemy.
The occupiers are using a scorched earth tactic both in the Kupiansk and Pokrovsk directions. These are massive strikes on the positions of Ukraine's defense forces, both at the temporary deployment points of personnel and primarily at the residential infrastructure of these cities, using glide bombs and other means of destruction, including the heavy flamethrower systems TOS-1A Sontsepyok. This is thermobaric weaponry, which is prohibited by conventions for use in urban environments. It has an indiscriminate effect, including on the civilian population.
Pokrovsk is now the epicenter of the most intense fighting.
Up to 170,000 personnel have been concentrated by the occupiers in the Pokrovsk direction. This is a quarter of all the units of the occupying country's army currently present on the territory of Ukraine. In addition, the occupiers have an advantage in the use of tactical and army aviation. Strikes are being carried out on the positions of Ukraine's defense forces using guided aerial bombs, KBs.
Russian units are tightening their grip around the city and trying to close the encirclement ring. Kremlin propaganda is already reporting a cauldron, but these statements are just another round of information manipulation. The General Staff of Ukraine refutes Moscow's claim of a complete encirclement. At the same time, they admit that the situation there is extremely serious.
Over the past few days, Ukraine's defense forces have managed to significantly stabilize the situation directly in Pokrovsk itself. By order of the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, special units of the Special Operations Forces, the main intelligence directorate of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine, and other components of Ukraine's defense forces were deployed to Pokrovsk. They are conducting search operations aimed at destroying small enemy assault groups.
Moreover, fighters from the 425th Separate Assault Regiment Skala cleared the city council building in Pokrovsk and raised the Ukrainian flag. A symbol of not only military but also political significance.
Special units of Ukraine's defense forces, in particular the Special Operations Forces of the main intelligence directorate of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine, are involved in the process of unblocking logistics for Ukrainian defenders, specifically the routes for delivering ammunition and essential supplies, evacuating the wounded soldiers and rotating personnel between positions. This is the main and most important task currently facing these special units.
Tactical successes are also being observed in adjacent areas along the Pokrovsk direction. In the Dobropilya salient, Ukrainian defenders have taken control of the settlement of Shakova. This complicates the enemy's plans for a major breakthrough and increases the chances for local stabilization.
This is the so-called Dobropilya salient. It is specifically Shakova that effectively cuts off Russian units from their rear supply bases. In addition, over the past week, Ukrainian defense forces have deoccupied a number of settlements in this direction. These are Kucheryov, Yarshakovo and Sukachki. and this has significantly improved the tactical situation.
On the other flank is Kupiansk in the Kharkiv region. Here, fighting is taking place for every street and every building. Flags on buildings change several times a day.
The situation in the Kupiansk direction has been stabilized. Moreover, even Russian sources note the lack of progress both in the Kupiansk direction and accordingly in the so-called Kupiansk sector.
Ukrainian forces are conducting a series of counterattacks. In particular, in the northern part of the city, the defenders managed to push back the occupiers. But it's too early to speak of a definitive success. The situation remains dynamic and unstable, changing literally every hour.
The defense forces carry out their tasks every day without stopping. They are constantly eliminating both small groups and halting columns of equipment. In the near future, the situation, according to Deep State and other maps, will keep changing, because in any case, we do not intend to abandon the city or give it up to the enemy.
Pokrovsk and Kupiansk are the 2 points where the further outcome of the war is being decided. Russia is throwing thousands of soldiers and tons of metal there. But it is unable to break Ukrainian resilience. Every meter of this land is a fight for life, for the future. And while the enemy tries to win by sheer numbers, Ukrainian fighters are destroying those numbers. What do you think about the situation in Pokrovsk? We are waiting for your comments. There's more to come. Stay informed about the main events and give this video a like. Wishing you peaceful skies above.